Okay. Hello, everybody. Tonight we start a new show in this series. Tonight we have some special guests. We have Big Bill Graham. We have Andy Crawford, Miles Hale. Now these guys you know, but now we have a couple of new people. We have Robert Holloman and Tom Kavicek from Tom's Trains and Tom's Trains and Things. Pardon me. So far in this series, we've covered Is the Hobby Dying? Youth in the Hobby. And tonight we're doing Freelance versus Prototype. So, might be interesting, might create some heated discussions. We'll see how it goes. And then in the future, we have what's the role of the NMRA in the hobby? So, without further ado, let's move on to our guests. Okay, welcome back to our discussion on freelance and prototype. And we hope that you're having fun, as much fun as we are. Andy had a question that we talked about offline that I think should be brought forward.
So kind of the impression that I was getting from some of the guys who are more inclined to the freelance side is that the reason that they choose to do that is because of the fun factor, the enjoyment factor, or whatever. And my curiosity was, did the freelance guys really think the prototype guys were like driven to do that, or in some way that it wasn't for the sheer enjoyment of it? I think it has to do with what part of it do you enjoy. And I think that the guys who just love in general are a little more inclined toward the freelance modeling potentially, because their interest might be generic, might be kind of a bad way to say that, but a little looser attention, and they're just interested in railroading in general. They tend to maybe be a little more freelance. The guys who tend to be more prototypical, and I talked to some of those guys on the internet and other forums of like-minded people, tend to get fascinated by or find enjoyment in a couple different areas. I have a lot of enjoyment from what I do, or I wouldn't do it. I strictly do the hobby because it's enjoyable and because I find enjoyment in it. And I'm fascinated, and I find a lot of other similar, like-minded people who find a tremendous amount of enjoyment from the history of it and from the study of the history and such. Those guys probably tend a little bit more toward, on this spectrum, toward possibly more of the prototype side of it. And I think it also has to do with where your inspiration comes from. My inspiration and what I'm so fascinated by is a very select prototype and a set of operations that the prototype did that I find a massive amount of enjoyment in studying the history of how those men and machines overcame nature. And I think that, my hope is anyway, is that my railroad will provide hours of enjoyment of me and operating that, because that exacting prototype in history was challenging for the prototype, and I think it would be a lot of fun to operate. It is sheer enjoyment, though. Prototype versus freelance. If you're doing this for some reason other than enjoy, I don't know why you do this for a reason other than just sheer enjoyment. That's the only reason.
So the question is, you're asking, do we who are freelance modelers believe that prototypical guys don't have as much fun? Is that correct?
Possibly, or that we're not doing it for the same reasons, or that possibly we're driven as opposed to just finding fun.
Let's ask Tom and Robert. Robert?
I think prototypers and freelance guys have fun in what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it at all. But I think it's different types of things that are fun to them. Like you said, a prototyper is going to be doing a lot of research, and they like doing the research. That's kind of their driving factor. Whereas, your freelance guy, he might have more fun watching trains go around and, being prototypical all the way throughout his diorama or his layout isn't all that important. He just wants to watch the trains go around, or she.
A looper.
Yeah. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I like watching the trains go around, but I it would drive me nuts if I had to go back and run boxcars in on a schedule, because that's not me. I worked on the railroad. I seen it happen, and that's not something that I want to do. My version of fun is just looping it around the rails, watching it go through the scenery that I built to the best of my ability. So my fun is a little bit different than somebody else's fun, but we're both having fun no matter what that fun is.
Right.
So I think the loopers tend to be more rail fans.
Yeah,
they want to just watch the train go through a scene or a set of scenes.
Okay, so here's a question for you as a prototyper and a freelancer. If you had the opportunity, what would you do? Ride the rail or take photographs of the rail cars and locomotives?
I would do both.
I would do both.
I enjoy both.
I would do both as well.
Okay.
But if there's wood trade going somewhere, and you can either chase it and take photos along the way, or you could be stuck in a passenger car way back in the back, just looking at it out the window, I would probably rather photo it. I'd rather chase it and chase it and take photos. Now, if you're talking about riding it,
I have to interject here. I really truly have to interject here. The way you just phrased that was, what would you rather do? Be stuck in the train? Okay, I hear what you're saying, because for you, that's what it is. It's stuck in the train. But here's my version of being stuck in the train. I'm stuck in the train with my patrol, my 47 years of marriage to my beautiful wife, enjoying the scenery outside the Virginia or wherever I am, and enjoying my time. Would be taking a photograph any different? Would it bring me that same enjoyment? Yes, it would. But see, that's the dividing line here. I think that as for the freelancers here, and the people who just want to see their trains go around the track and have a cold adult beverage, it's enjoyment. What you find enjoyment in is great. But you take it to I personally, Andy, I love you like a brother. Not necessarily my brother, but I love you. But you take that to an extreme, like if you were stuck, or like prototypical is like, I think through the spectrum of it, it makes for great conversation. But at the end of the day, as I said earlier, this ain't brain surgery, bro. This is plastic trains on wooden platforms, and we're just here to enjoy it.
When I first started my layout, I started saying that I'm going to be doing the transition era, probably 50s to 70s, and I'm going to work from there. Well, once I started doing my weathering and these newer locomotives came in for work to be done on them, I changed my tune. So freelance, I'm now not stuck like some prototypers who will say, my layout is August 21st at 8 a.m. in the morning. Like, how anal is that? To me, that's my opinion.
I've heard that before.
But then on my layout, because I've changed era, all I have to do is change some vehicles and change my locomotives, and I can go from one decade to the next, because the buildings don't really change that much.
I think that the situation calls for. I had somebody say mine is urban decay, 1970s on, whatever, not any particular day. And some guy commented on one of my videos. He said, "Bill, you're in the wrong era. We didn't have containers that are on your layout." I'm like,
so what?
Okay. So what? I like the containers.
Well,
Andy,
my thinking about
Go ahead, Andy. Your rebuttal.
But yeah, my rebuttal about the riding versus photography part is, if you give me an option of riding in the cab or vestibule or walking around, I'm going to ride the train because I'm going to enjoy the train. Now, if you're talking about whether I'm going to just forget about the fact that I'm riding a train and spend the day with my wife, sure, but that's great, that's fine, but that's not railroading. So if my interest in railroading, if we're talking about where does my interest in railroading lie, it's going to be in not getting as far away from the railroading stuff as possible and doing something else, because I wouldn't do it. It would be as involved with that railroading as possible. Now, if that means I can, walk around, go to the vestibule, possibly get some time in the cab, go ride the caboose, I'm good with riding. But if I'm interested in doing something railroad related, then I want to be doing the railroad related thing. Now, I'm all for riding the train, taking the dinner train that we have outside of Lexington, taking my wife up there and having dinner with her and ride the train and stuff would be a fine thing. But that's not satisfying any of my interest in railroading. I'm just having dinner and the scenery's going by as I'm doing so. That's not railroad. That's not satisfying any of my interests in railroads, though.
Well, going back to that, I would take a video of the train coming by. I'd get on the train. I'd enjoy the scenery as it's going by, and get off and take video as it was going away.
I like
so
that
you have the best of both worlds right there.
And that was going to be my direct answer to your question, Andy. It was that, you're talking about that Cheyenne excursion train, right? That only really kind of goes one direction for the excursion. I'd ride the train one year. The next year I'd go out and rail fan it.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in railroading, you're going to be drawn to probably both sides of railroading in that way. And I get the value in some of the freelance stuff. My only dispute or debate in this whole thing is that freelance, I think, is entirely the wrong word, because I've never met a freelance modeler. Not really. People who say they are. And I think it has to do with what your inspiration and what your drive is. If your inspiration is to write your own story, to be creative and build it entirely from your imagination, I get the desire to do more fictitious stuff and lean toward freelance. And I have all the respect in the world for those who do that. And if your desire is that history, your inspiration is the history, then leaning more toward prototype. And both of those are entirely respectable positions that don't deserve any condemnation from either side. But the disagreement, I think, comes down to the people who don't take it very seriously at all, the problem that I see is that most of the guys who set up a loop of track, turn trains on, or just watch them run are guys that tend to not stay with the hobby very long. They tend to, because there has to be some interest, either building, operating, or something has to give you some interest that will last a lifetime. And just watching trains in a loop is not a lifetime of enjoyment.
Okay, with that said, Andy, you asked how we feel the prototypers think of us as freelancers. I'm asking now, as a freelancer, what do you as a prototyper think of the freelancers? Because it sounds like you're looking down.
No, not at all. I think that it depends on, again, it's this scale proportion thing. So if you've got a guy who has plastic track on a green piece of plywood and he's never going to do anything else than watch it go around in a circle, I think that guy has very simple. It takes very simple things to entertain him. That's fine. If he's happy doing that, he's very simply entertained. But I have no qualms at all with the guy who creatively builds something that is not a prototype thing. He's using his creativity to build a story and to have created something. Some of those are some of the best modelers I've ever seen, are guys who are not modeling a prototype. They're spectacular, and they find lifetimes of enjoyment out of that. So the problem is freelance is such a broad statement. The guys who model fictitiously, but who are actually modelers, I find a lot of inspiration from those guys. The guys who are interested in a circle of track, that are interested in toy trains, I'm not inspired by them. I don't think they're inspired by their hobby. I think they're as inclined to leave that hobby in a year as, I don't think they'll stick with it. If they don't find interest in one of a couple things, either being creative and telling a story, or finding history fascinating, one of the two.
Okay, so look at what happened.
I have a circle of track, but what I do with it is I squeeze it at one end, and and I have maybe 3 loops on my layout altogether,
Sure.
and I could move from one loop to another. But that's not saying that I'm going to lose interest in it because I have a circle of track.
Oh no!
I love building the buildings. I love doing the scenery and everything else, and it's going to keep me occupied, until the day I die.
Well, you're a builder. You're a builder. You like the creative side of building the layout. It's not
And I
about
like to look at the train going around the loop.
Oh, sure.
But I think to Andy's point, he pretty much boiled it down to the smallest common denominator in his question, in his
the
statement,
4x8 sheet of plywood going
yeah,
around in
and
a
all it
circle.
has is one circle of track. There's nothing
right.
extra going to that. You know, I have to
Okay.
kind of agree with Andy on that one because, you know, you see that, and unless you kind of start to see the spark of imagination,
Yep.
the chances are is that person just, you know, bought a starter set and really just, I'm not. That's not me. I just wanted to give it a shot.
But
It's
I wouldn't
gonna be
even
a
put
box.
that in there as a freelancer. I would just say that, you know, that's somebody who's beginning and trying out the hobby and, you know, just stagnating right there.
Yeah,
Right.
it's made up in a
Like
box.
when I tested out the N scale.
To that
Yeah.
point, Andy, to that point, if you remember, I think it was 2 years ago, Robert had 2 sheets of plywood.
Sure.
Yep.
And it was a loop and a half, sort of one loop with an extra,
It's 2 loops.
and he was trying to make it
3 loops.
what it wasn't, and we talked him into what he's got behind him there now. He has his layout in the garage, and it's huge.
Yeah, you took a giant leap over the shelf layout that I was working on too.
Well,
but
you had to get there somehow, right? And that's where you started.
But
Well,
now
and we've
I'm
all-
out to a
But
literally it eats up my entire garage.
but what a great segue, because look how much influence we here at YouTube Model Builders gave Robert.
Exactly.
But his pursuit.
I mean, it's like joining a club without actually joining a club.
There you go, Robert.
That's right. Without all the politics or dues. But
There you go.
Well, I don't know about that.
Robert,
The dues will agree. The politics, on the other hand,
That's right.
Wait a
But
minute.
Robert's
Wait a minute.
pursuit was
My-
never a green sheet of plywood with a train running around it and around it in circles. He was always, even with that very first, hooking up Arduinos and lighting up signals and trying to do more stuff with it. Now, that may not have been operations focused or prototype focused, but you have to have something that will sustain for the many years of knowledge you have to acquire to get any good at this stuff. And that sustaining and that sustenance has to come from either creativity and construction or from historical fidelity and then the construction according to that.
well, and in this vein of prototype versus freelance, what a lot of people don't know about that first layout that I built, Andy, was that it was literally going to be freelance. One table was going to be the Battle of Hoth from Star Wars. The other one was going to be a battle scene from Halo.
Yeah, that's pretty freelance. I'll grant you that.
That was the original design of that one. Of course, I never actually went that route, but
No,
That's
but
because you got talking to us.
well, look where you
exactly.
more further. The thing is that look at the inertia of modelers. As they age and become more serious in the hobby, they become closer and closer and closer to the prototype. Now, maybe that never means that they become the rivet counters. Maybe they don't go that far ever. I think this has to do with some personality, quirks of personality that makes you either the more creative side or the more historically faithful side of quirk of personality. But you always lead further and further toward scale accuracy and detail focus and closer to what the prototype did or could have done as you age and grow and mature. Mature is the better word. As you mature in the hobby, you head that direction regardless, or at least everybody I've ever seen that stayed in the hobby did that. And if they didn't mature toward that direction, they ended up out of the hobby, at least in my experience.
Okay. So let me just sum it up a little bit. We go from freelance to prototype, the difference between and how everybody's gotten there and how we learn along the way to improve ourselves, to have fun. So the question then becomes to our viewers, to what degree are you one or the other? Or are you in the middle? Or are you just having fun for the hell of it? So on that note, I think we'll cut it here. And I invite the viewers to come back and join us when we talk about our next topic. So Andy, thank you. Bill, thank you. Robert, Tom, and Miles is gone. Thank you very much for your wonderful discussions, rebuttals, buttals, and so on, arguments, whatever. And I'm sure we could probably continue on a little bit more, but let's cut it here and say we did.
Can I just say one thing?
Certainly.
Let's go Mets. They won 2. Hi, this is Big Bill. First and foremost, we want to thank you for tuning in to watching Model Railroad Views. I hope it was as exciting for you and that you got something out of it as much as we did in putting into this. We put a lot of work into it. And we hope that it has sparked an interest with you and your fellow modelers when you're around the train table. I hope it enlightens the discussion with you. We will be doing more of these types of series. And if you have any ideas for further discussion, please feel free to drop it in the comments below, right below there. Just drop a comment and let us know what you'd like us to cover. We hope to do this in the near future. And we've had a pleasure doing it, and we hope you've enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making them. So once again, thank you very much for tuning in. You take care, God bless, and most definitely we will see you on the radio.